There's been a lot of talk lately about how things will be when they get back to normal. Speculation about what the new normal will look like. But here's the thing, normal never really existed.
You're so strange. And I like it.
See what I mean? For instance, do you have a normal family? As in, everybody in your family is completely normal, so there's no dysfunction or mental illness or addiction. And whenever you all get together, everybody gets along 100%? Yeah, that's what I figured. See, the whole reason that we judge other people who are different than us is because we have this ridiculous idea that normal exists as one true North Star, one singular definition. But newsflash, it doesn't. Each one of us have a set of lived experiences that shapes our idea of what normal means to us. What's normal for somebody who grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast like I did might be very different than what's normal for somebody who grew up in New York City or in Tokyo, Japan. All sorts of things shape our individual definitions of what normal means to us. The opinions and values of the parents and families who raised us. Whether we had parents to raise us at all. Whether we grew up rich or poor or middle class. All sorts of things shape our individual definitions of what normal means. How might we be more curious about trying to understand somebody else's definition of normal instead of judging their lives by our own version of normal? Normal is a spectrum, and so are most aspects of life. But instead, we want everything to be this or that, yes or no, right or wrong. We're uncomfortable swimming in the uncertainty. As professional communicators, as business leaders, and as individuals, we must get comfortable embracing the uncomfortable. We must begin to shift towards together. And let's face it, we're never going to go back to the old version of normal. And let's face it, right? The old normal normalized plenty of things that should never have been normal to begin with. Leadership teams representative of a very small subset of the population making decisions that would affect everyone. Companies that care more about this quarter's earnings than their long-term ramifications on people and the planet. We can't go back to business as usual. We have an opportunity to reimagine the future of communications, the future of business, the future of humanity. We have an opportunity and an obligation to create more innovative and inclusive company cultures. Our world is at a tipping point. We need as many diverse perspectives and experiences as possible, contributing to solve some of the world's most pressing problems. And it all starts with curiosity, a willingness to swim in that uncertainty and to get comfortable embracing the uncomfortable. Luckily, there are tools and frameworks dating back decades that lay a foundation for deliberate creativity and curiosity. A few years ago, I got really interested in learning more about the science of creativity. Why are some people more creative than others, it seems? Can we train ourselves to be more creative? The answer is yes, by the way. There's tools and frameworks that exist to spur deliberate creativity and more innovation within your organization. One of the first places that I began to learn about this was through Tulane University's Taylor Center for Social Innovation and Design Thinking. Tulane University's Taylor Center produces a number of different events and programming that introduce both students, faculty, and people in the community to the basics of design thinking. One of these programs is called the Fast 48 Boot Camp. So it's a weekend-long 48-hour boot camp, and I attended my first one in April 2017. One of the things I love about Tulane's Fast 48 program is how they partner with the local nonprofit organization Play Build NOLA to solve real-world problems for that organization. Playbuild NOLA is located in the Central City neighborhood of New Orleans, which has traditionally been a historically Black community and a lower income community than a lot of other neighborhoods here in the city. Playbuild NOLA works to transform underutilized urban spaces into kid-friendly environments for learning and play. As I mentioned, the Fast 48 program takes place over the course of a weekend. So on Saturday morning, we spend a few hours on the ground in Central City, walking around, talking to people in the neighborhood and in the community, both business owners and residents, to learn more about what their issues are. How are the kids interacting with what Playbuild has put there on the ground? What are some of their concerns and thoughts about their neighborhood? By starting from this mindset of curiosity and empathy, we're able to listen with open hearts and open minds to come up with some better solutions once we get back into the classroom to start generating ideas and potential solutions for the problem at hand that we're solving for Playbuild. In your roles as business communicators and marketing professionals, I would love to know more about how you're able to employ similar techniques. Are you able to talk directly to your customers, to your clients, to listen empathetically and ask curious questions? What kind of feedback are you getting from them about their wants, needs, fears, feelings? What drives them? Please feel free to drop your responses in the chat box. I'll be monitoring it during this session, and we'll also have some live Q&A at the end. In their book, Creative Confidence, David and Tom Kelly note the importance of empathy with clients, users, and customers as the basis for innovative design. Brothers David and Tom are two of the founding leaders in the world of design thinking. David Kelly is the founder of Stanford University's D-School, which offers a free virtual crash course in design thinking, in case you'd like to dive a bit deeper than our time here will allow. David and Tom are also the co-founders of the world-renowned design firm IDEO, which aims to create positive impact through design. They've been practicing what's known as human-centered design since the firm got its start in 1978. A few years back, Tulane University's Taylor Center hosted a lecture by an alumni who had gone on to work for IDEO. Unfortunately, I can't recall his name, and I've tried to look it up and I can't find it, but something that he said that day really stuck with me. He remarked that IDEO, we don't hire for culture fit. We hire for culture add. When he said this, it really stuck with me because it goes to the heart of what both diversity and inclusion in the workplace is all about, as well as what innovation in business is all about. A company that focuses on culture fit above all else ends up homogenous, bland, uninnovative. Everyone is the same and thinks the same. On the other hand, a company made up of a diverse group of people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different ways of seeing things, that can sometimes lead to some uncomfortable situations as misunderstandings or disagreements arise. But that uncomfortableness and getting comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling, that can actually lead to more innovation. That friction creates innovative solutions. When a company is not only diverse, but truly inclusive, when they truly listen to everybody on the team, when they truly value everyone's unique perspective, even if it may be very different than the majority, that can be the friction that ignites the spark to drive innovation, to drive idea generation. When we approach creative problem solving from a mindset of curiosity, empathy, and open-hearted questioning, magic can happen. And speaking of magic, a magical experience and place for me has been the Creative Problem Solving Institute, also known as CIPSE Conference. So a few months after I attended my first design thinking boot camp at Tulane University, I attended my first CIPSE conference. This conference, the Creative Problem Solving Institute, is the world's longest running creativity conference. Really, I was amazed the first time I went, they had the different attendees raise their hand to show how long they'd been going. And there is one woman that had been going for 6 decades, for real. I had the pleasure and honor of being the MC of the conference last year. And by the way, they're having their virtual event this month during June, and you can check out their webinars if you're interested in diving deeper after my session. CIPSE is produced by the Creative Education Foundation, which is a nonprofit that mobilizes leaders in creativity theory and practice. Both CIPSE Conference and the Creative Education Foundation focus on teaching the creative problem-solving process, which was originally developed by Alex Osborne and Sid Parnes in the 1940s and 50s. Alex Osborne was a lot like us, a business communications professional. One of the original Mad Men, he was an advertising executive who founded his ad agency way back in 1919, so 100 years ago. Osborne successfully ran his ad agency for many years and almost made it through the Great Depression unscathed. But then in 1938, they lost some key clients and some key personnel, and suddenly things started to shift. He had to figure out how to get more creative, how to get more innovative. Osborne's approach to deliberate creativity and innovation is really what saved his company. He managed to secure an account with Goodrich Tires and later went on to work with General Electric and Chrysler, among others. During the 1940s and 50s, he turned to writing and documenting some of the deliberate creativity practices that he'd come up with. He actually coined the term brainstorming. In 1954, Alex Osborne founded the Creative Education Foundation, and along with his work partner Sid Parnes, who was a professor at Buffalo State University, he developed the creative problem-solving process that we still use today. I was first introduced to the creative problem-solving process at my first CIPSE conference in 2017. For newcomers to the process, they offer a 3-day intensive called Springboard. So it's a super deep dive into this whole process, but I'll try to sum it up more quickly than that. The creative problem-solving process is made up of 4 stages: clarify, ideate, develop, and implement. The clarify stage is typically the longest part of this process. By asking a lot of questions up front and getting really clear on the problem that you're trying to solve and understanding the needs of the user or the client, you really have much more useful outcomes, and every other part of this process becomes that much more efficient. During the clarify stage, you explore the vision. You ask questions to understand your goal or objective that you're trying to solve the problem for. You also gather data in order to develop a clear understanding of the problem or challenge at hand. Next, during the ideate stage, you generate ideas. A lot of people associate this stage with brainstorming, but really that's just one tool among many that can be used to generate ideas that you can explore further. The third stage is develop. At this point, you're really exploring all the ideas that you've generated and trying to figure out which ones would be the best solution or fit to the problem at hand. The final stage is implement. This is all about formulating a specific plan to put those ideas into action. Each stage of the creative problem-solving process incorporates both divergent and convergent thinking. So divergent thinking means you go wide and expand upon things, and convergent thinking means you come back together to decide which ideas or solutions you want to move forward with. Brainstorming is probably the most well-known aspect of divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is all about curiosity, deferring judgment, and asking questions. Divergent questions are framed in such a way that it allows people to generate insights, but still generate lots of ideas, plenty of ideas that reach far and wide. Convergent thinking, on the other hand, is where we come back together. At this point, our choices are deliberate and conscious. Whether we are doing convergent thinking on our own or as a group, we're being very deliberate and strategic. As I was learning about this, it really struck me that the core principles of creative problem solving have so much in common with the core principles of creating an inclusive company culture. The creative problem solving process starts off with 2 assumptions. Everyone is creative in some way. Or everyone has innate value that they can bring to work. The second assumption is that creative skills can be learned and enhanced. Or to speak to inclusion, being an inclusive leader, team member, or community member requires certain skills that can be learned and must be practiced deliberately. Here are a few other guidelines that we have to keep in mind when it comes to deliberate creativity and innovation. Divergent thinking and convergent thinking must be balanced. So divergent thinking and convergent thinking have to be balanced, but they also have to be kept separate. Because if you're trying to judge ideas and the validity of those ideas, at the same time you're trying to generate a lot of ideas, it just doesn't work. You have to have this weighing balance between generating lots and lots of ideas, even if they're a little off the beaten path, or even if they don't seem to make sense at first, because those crazy ideas can actually help generate the ideas that could be the ones to solve the problem. Similarly, if you want to create a strong sense of inclusion and belonging in your organization, there needs to be some structures put in place in order to create psychological safety. The divergent thinking of soliciting feedback from your employees, team members, clients about how you might improve things within your organization, that needs to be separated from the convergent thinking of deciding how you're going to put that feedback into action, what policies or procedures you're going to put into play. The next guideline is ask problems as questions. When you reframe problems or challenges as open-ended questions instead, it allows for more divergent thinking. It allows for people to generate more rich information, more potential solutions. When we reframe problems or challenges as questions, it allows us to not only communicate better with our team members or colleagues, but it also allows us to communicate more effectively and efficiently with our clients and customers. So here's an example when it comes to clients or customers, but you could use this for team members too. If you're doing surveys, instead of using checkboxes or radio buttons that force people to answer something that you have already assumed to be one of their potential answers, try using open-ended text fields instead. You'll not only get more insights that you might not have even thought of before, you'll also be able to see the exact language that your clients or customers use to talk about their problems. You can then take that language and use that in your marketing copy, on your website, in your social media post, in your email marketing blast, etc. The next guideline is defer or suspend judgment. Early on in his work with brainstorming, Alex Osborne quickly learned that judgments tend to limit creativity. So as soon as we judge an idea as good or bad, it tends to stop us from generating more ideas. So especially during the divergent thinking parts of the creative problem-solving process, we want to hold off on any judgment for now. Similarly, when it comes to creating inclusive company cultures, how might we defer judgment? Again, our idea of normal might be very different than somebody else's definition of normal. So how might we approach their experiences or their concerns from a mindset of curiosity instead of a mindset of judgment? How might we try to better understand where they're coming from? Even if we might not agree, it can bring us closer together and allow us to communicate better with each other. And the final guideline is to focus on yes and rather than no but. If you've ever watched or participated in improv theater, you might be familiar with this concept of yes and. Here's the thing, language matters. Just the simple phrasing of yes and allows us to continue generating and building upon ideas. When we say no but, shuts everything down. Similarly, when colleagues and team members or customers and clients approach us with an unexpected or non-traditional request, how might we approach that with a yes and response rather than a no but? In the last few months, as people around the world have suddenly had to switch to work from home environments, even if those accommodations were previously a no but situation, they've suddenly become yes and. The very fact that we're here in this virtual conference today is something that might have been unheard of in a no but scenario just a few short years ago. But at the same time, lots of people have requested certain types of these accommodations for years and been met with no buts. Work from home moms, people with disabilities, all sorts of people need different accommodations, and we often say, oh no, it's just not efficient, it doesn't work for the bottom line, it's too hard, the technology isn't there. But what we're learning more and more in this particular moment in time is that yes and is totally doable. Okay, now that we've established some guidelines, I would love to explore some specific tools and techniques that you can take back into your organizations to spur collaboration and innovation and better communication with your teams. So let's talk about a few specific tools. Brainstorming is one divergent thinking tool that I've already mentioned a few times here, and it's something that a lot of people are familiar with in a broad sense, but I would love to dive a little bit deeper into the specifics of how you can use it. So brainstorming is something that you can either use alone or in a group. First, you'll want to write down the challenge statement or problem framed as a question so that everyone can see it and everyone's on the same page. Then you'll want to remind everyone of the divergent thinking guidelines, which are defer judgment. And remember, this isn't the same as having no judgment. It's just at this particular moment, we don't judge things as good or bad. We wait to make those sorts of evaluations. Combine and build. Every new idea that pops up that someone else mentions, that's a potential springboard for even more ideas. Seek wild ideas. So once at a Fast 48 boot camp, one of the facilitators prompted us by saying, "What would astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson do in this situation?" Even though those crazy shoot for the moon ideas might not be the solution that works, they can help us generate more ideas so that we can come up with potential solutions that could work. Go for quantity. At this point, quantity actually is more important than quality. One of the few situations where that's true. So by generating lots of ideas and going for a quota, a specific number of ideas, we can come up with plenty of bad ideas, but we'll find those shining gems and the needles in the haystack in the process. So speaking of quantity, a quota is something that is really helpful to set during this brainstorming process. So it depends on if you're doing this by yourself or how many people in the group or how much time you have. But setting a quota can help to continue that generation of ideas because you're trying to meet that goal, that number. So particularly if you're doing this brainstorming process in a group, one adaptation that's really helpful is called stick 'em up brainstorming. So you use Post-its of any size and markers, big bold markers. State your ideas out loud as they come and also write them on the Post-its and stick them up on the wall. That way everybody can see them and everybody can hear your ideas. Because by saying our ideas out loud and writing them down, it can help other people to springboard off of those ideas into even more ideas. Another divergent thinking tool I like is similar, and it's called brain writing. So brain writing is a little quieter, a little slower, a little more chill than brainstorming can be. So if we have large groups, brainstorming, sticking up ideas, calling them out as you say them can sometimes feel a little frantic, a little overwhelming. And if you have some introverted or shy members of your team, or if you have somebody who sort of is always the louder person in the group, always sort of taking credit for things, brain writing can be a great alternative to brainstorming. So there's a couple of methods that you can use. I've created a PDF, which I will share, but you can use a brain writing template, kind of like this one, or you can use Post-its on a piece of paper, like this. So the idea is that you would write your problem or question challenge statement up at the top, and then each person will fill out 3 ideas. So person 1 will fill out 1 idea, 2 ideas, 3 ideas. And we often allow 5 minutes per person. And then once that 5 minutes is done, once everybody has their 3 ideas written down, you pass the paper over to the next person. And then the next person writes in the second column their 3 ideas, which might be 3 completely original ideas, or they might build upon the ideas that the first person wrote. And then you continue this process, pass them on until you've gotten the whole sheet filled out with lots of ideas. So brainstorming and brain writing are just 2 divergent thinking tools, and there are others, but I don't have time to cover them all right now. But once you've generated all of those ideas, how do you converge and decide which ones to move forward with? One of my favorite convergent thinking tools is called dot voting, and this is really helpful when you have a large group and you need to build consensus. If you've been using Post-its for your brainstorming or brain writing exercises, you might want to arrange them into similar groups of ideas before you start this dot voting process. Before the voting starts, you'll want to have everybody review all of the ideas that were generated. And for each person, they'll get a certain amount of votes. So it might be 1 vote, it might be 3 votes. It really depends on your situation. You can make that call. For the voting, you can use those little dot stickers. You can use, if you have some other fun shaped stickers, or you can also have everybody use a Sharpie marker and make a dot on the Post-it or next to the idea that they want to vote for. Now, in order to avoid groupthink, you might have everybody look and evaluate, decide on the votes they're going to make, write their votes down, and then have everybody go up and actually place their vote. That way they're not voting based on what they already saw somebody else vote for. Once the voting is done, you'll start to see patterns. You'll see that some ideas have lots of votes and lots of interest, while other ideas might have no votes at all. You'll be able to push those ideas to the side and continue to develop and refine the ideas that have some interest and have votes behind them. One aspect of the creative problem-solving process that has really stuck with me and affected more parts of my life than just this is invitational language stems. Invitational language stems are a divergent thinking tool that help us reframe questions to allow for more open-ended exploration and more curiosity. Here's a few examples. How to? How might I? In what ways might we? It would be great if. What I see us doing is. Invitational language stems can help us to generate more ideas and to be more innovative. And embracing invitational language stems in our everyday communications can also help us to become more inclusive business communicators, business leaders, and people. Here's the thing, we can't go back to the old normal. The old normal was keeping us apart, and in order to solve the problems of the 21st century, we have to shift towards together. As professional communicators, we have an opportunity, an obligation to dismantle the archaic systems of oppression that have ruled all of our lives for far too long. When we make decisions within our companies and within our daily lives, we have the opportunity and the obligation to ask with curiosity, who does this benefit? And who may this harm? When we're developing marketing strategies and communication plans, we have the opportunity and the obligation to ask, do our products, services, and marketing strategies reflect the needs of all of the people that we serve? When we communicate, are we reinforcing inequities, or are we reimagining the ways that we use our tools and our skills that are available to us so that we might create a more just and equitable and accessible society for all? When we're building out our teams, when we are expanding our professional and personal networks, we have the opportunity and the obligation to ask, who here will push me to challenge the status quo? In what ways might I broaden the diversity of my network? And how might I ensure that each person feels valued and seen and understood? As professional communicators, as business leaders, and as individuals, we must get comfortable embracing the uncomfortable. What are we doing to unpack our own biases? We all have them. We all have the lens of our own lived experiences that shapes our individual definition of normal. For those of us passionate about shifting the future of the communications profession, we must do the uncomfortable work of unlearning the ways in which an unjust and unequal society has shaped us as individuals. Are you ready to redefine the future of business communications? Are you ready to shift towards together?